Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever in the world you are. Welcome to this program. Today, I would like to deal with the issue of why the Zimbabwean intelligentsia and urbanites participating in these flawed elections. It is unbelievable. These are the people who, by all accounts, should know better. ZANU-PF is rigging these elections. That's at the heart of this issue. And participating in a process that is so flawed that even when Morgan Tsvangirai won 73% of the vote in 2008, it was not good enough to get him the keys to State House. Ever since, the system has not been reformed, and ZANU-PF has retained the carte blanche powers to rig these elections. And so participating is only giving legitimacy to the system. And to keep on participating is really an exercise in futility. Credit where credit is due. In 2008, SADC forced ZANU-PF to sign the Global Political Agreement, which ended up in the setting up of the Government of National Unity of 2008 to 2013. The primary purpose of that Government of National Unity was to implement the democratic reforms to make sure that the blatant cheating and the wanton violence of 2008 would never be repeated again. Alas, not even one meaningful reform was implemented in 5 years of the GNU. Towards the end of the GNU in 2013, when SADC realized that not even one meaningful reform had been implemented, they actually called a special SADC summit to discuss that issue in Maputo, Mozambique. And they told Morgan Tsvangirai and his MDC friends to their faces that you should not be participating in the coming elections without reforms, because ZANU-PF will rig them. Unfortunately, Tsvangirai and company did not listen. They were so convinced that they would win the elections. So they went ahead and participated. And we all know the result. ZANU-PF blatantly rigged those elections. And ZANU-PF was back in power again. And this time, with all their carte blanche powers to rig elections still intact. ZANU-PF learned one big lesson during the GNU, that as long as they can rig the elections, as long as they keep the facade that Zimbabwe is a functioning multi-party democracy, they will get away with it. And that is exactly what has been happening since 2013. You would think by now the ordinary Zimbabweans out there the penny has finally dropped. They finally realized this is an exercise in futility, participating in these elections that are so flawed that we don't even have something as basic as a verified voter's roll. That people in the rural areas are literally being held to ransom by ZANU-PF. ZANU-PF has instituted, reignited its cell system where people in the rural areas are now being told they must attend these cell meetings at least once a week. And the register is being kept. And they've been warned that those who do not attend those cell meetings will only have themselves to blame. And on voting day, some ZANU-PF goon will be marking a register on who goes in to vote in each polling stations. They've increased the number of polling stations. There were about 10 polling stations per constituency in 2008. These have been increased now to over 60 in each polling station, in each constituency. And in 2008, there was a constituency voters' roll. You could vote in any one of those 10 polling stations. That has changed. Now it's a polling station-based voters' roll. You cannot vote anywhere. So you have got to go to the designated polling station. And ZANU-PF operatives, as we speak right now, they already got their polling station voters roll. They will know who is going to vote in their polling station. And no doubt will be visiting these people, asking them to attend the ZANU-PF cell meetings and telling them a register is being kept and that those who do not attend the cell meetings will only have themselves to blame. And on voting day, the same official will be marking a register of who goes into the polling station to vote. The opposition has been claiming that they will counteract that. They will have Operation Green Mangoes, where an individual can continue to attend some of these ZANU-PF cell meetings and pretend that they support the party. And then on voting day, they can vote for Triple C, whose color is yellow. And the green mango is supposed to be green on the outside, which is the color of the ruling party, ZANU-PF. And when it's ripe, turns yellow inside. So the idea is people can go and vote for whoever they like. Of course, it's a myth. The reason why they've increased all these polling stations from 10 to 60, why they've changed the voting from voting in any of the polling station in a constituency to a specific, you can only vote in one polling station. The vote counting will be made at the polling station, And the ZANU-PF operative would have ticked who has gone in there. In the rural areas, they'll probably know the 60 or so people who, the 600 or so people who are entitled to vote in each polling station. If not by name, they'll know them by face. And when the results come, they'll compare it with their own cell register. All those people who went in, if half of them voted for ZANU-PF, the other half voted for the opposition, they'll be able to identify who are those who voted for ZANU-PF. And then the rest will be dealt with. This will become even more significant if there should be a runoff. Because ZANU-PF's intention in these elections is either to win, from Mnangagwa to win the presidency outright in the first round. But if he's forced to go into the runoff, they will know who to target. And they will not allow Chamisa to win in the first round. That would not be allowed to happen. In this case here, one has got to ask, surely the intellectuals and those in the urban centers, the urbanites, by now, surely the pen must have dropped that these elections are a farce. So why do they keep on participating? Well, one of the reasons they keep on participating is that they've got the opposition. Some of them, people like Themba Mliswa, who is the independent member of parliament for Norton, which is just a town 40 kilometers west of Harare. And he's one of the independent members of parliament, very vocal. He was in ZANU-PF before he was booted out. But since then, he has been standing as an independent and has managed to win in Norton. And he is one of those who want to give the impression that the opposition is working. The opposition is doing a good job. And in this particular case, it is worthwhile contesting these elections. And he has been out campaigning. And this is just one of his videos with his supporters in Norton. He's not the only independent or opposition politician participating in these elections, of course. But he is one of those who have given confidence to the ordinary people that these elections are worth contesting. One of the other opposition politicians who have been very vocal is none other than Tendai Biti. This is Tendai Biti admitting that it is futile participating in these flawed elections. The regime has mastered the art of rigging elections. It is pointless to keep on participating and pretend will change anything. And yet, full credit to Tedai Biti, by the way. You're smart enough to acknowledge the futility of these flawed elections. And full credit to him as well for having the courage to admit it. But even he could not resist the overwhelming drive to participate for no other good reason than greed. Those who participate will get a few of the seats that ZANU-PF gives away for the purposes of giving the appearance that the elections are free, fair, and credible, and that Zimbabwe is a healthy and functioning democracy. That is the justification for it. And he could not resist it. But when you come to people like Themba Mlisko, of course, I don't think they even appreciate that. I don't think he's smart enough to know that participating in these flawed elections is futile. If he does, he has never admitted it. And from his campaign there, he's telling his people that it's worthwhile. In his write-up, as part of his campaign, he was telling the people of Norton that he's building toilets and boreholes for the various schools and other key institutions, and is paying for those things himself. And when you consider that, plus his performance in Parliament, because he's one, like Tendai Biti, the two of them particularly have been known to give their long speeches in Parliament. But when push comes to shove, it has got to be admitted that their long speeches have not stopped ZANU-PF doing exactly what it wanted to do. Zimbabwe is a failed state because we are stuck with ZANU-PF. The opposition's presence in Parliament has not stopped ZANU-PF. That is the reality. And our friend Themba Mlisko, he sometimes calls himself the bull of Norton. It has not occurred to him, no doubt, that building toilets and installing these boreholes to these people of Norton, as much as they are grateful for it, it has got to be admitted that these are some of the things that people should be able to do for themselves. There in the video, there are a number of young men and women who are rallying behind him to support him in his campaign. One has got to ask how many of them are in full-time employment. Considering Zimbabwe, unemployment rate is at 80% plus, and has been that high for the last 20 years. And no wonder these people have got to rely on their MP to build them even simple things like toilets for schools. But I can tell you now, Norton will never be an island of economic prosperity where these young men and women are living in houses with clean running water, no power cuts, and with plenty of food to eat. Even in the middle, to become an oasis of prosperity and good life in the middle of Zimbabwe, the failed state desert. That will never happen. The most important task for the members of parliament in Zimbabwe today is to restore good governance. That is the only way we're going to end this crisis of failed state. At the present moment, the country has been stuck with this corrupt, incompetent, and tyrannical ZANU-PF dictatorship for 43 years. And as long as ZANU-PF is able to rig the elections and stay in power, the country will remain a failed state. And these MPs, these individuals who participate in these elections, to give the process some credibility, to give ZANU-PF legitimacy, are helping to perpetuate the dictatorship. That is not helping the country. That is not solving the problem. You can have as articulate opposition MP as you like. But as long as ZANU-PF remains in power, and in this particular case, participating in these elections is exactly what ZANU-PF wants you to do. You participate, you give the regime legitimacy. It's that simple. And the regime has made it very attractive for the opposition to participate. They've not only been giving away these few gravy train seats, Mnangagwa has since expanded that for all those who participate in the elections as presidential candidates, at least in 2018. As long as they were prepared to stand up and say the elections were free, fair, and credible, they joined a body called POLAD, Political Party Actors Dialogue. It's just a body that has got no functions at all. It was just a way of rewarding those losing presidential candidates who endorsed him as the legitimate candidate. They got free cars and other frisbees. In this year's election, so far there are about 11 candidates contesting the presidential in the presidential race. And 4 of them were in Poland in the present parliament. And after 24th of August, next month, undoubtedly, those 4 will endorse the elections as being free, fair, and credible. And hopefully, they are keeping their fingers crossed on that one, because this Poland body is not really constitutional. There's no constitutional basis for it. And so could be easily be scrapped. It's just one of those add-ons by presidential decree. But I believe that Mnangagwa will keep it because he needs some kind of legitimacy. And so there will be, again, joining Poland. And people like Themba Mliswa is hoping that he will retain his seat in Norton and all the benefits that go with that as well. And so the regime will be once again legitimized. And the people of Zimbabwe will have another 5 years of this corrupt, incompetent, and tyrannical ZANU-PF. And I hope these young men and women in Norton will remember that. But of course, they'll get their toilet and borehole, and no doubt will be impressed by that. It is a pity that the people who should really be leading the country in scrutinizing this system and saying this system has failed the country, we need to change it, are the ones who are so gullible, so naive, that they celebrate failure. They participate and perpetuate the dictatorship and the suffering of all. No one needs, it's not rocket science to see that this process is flawed. I mean, it's ridiculous. We should not even be talking about this. Even at this stage, these people should see this process is not working. ZANU-PF is rigging 2023. And by participating, they are giving the regime legitimacy. It is that simple. And it is a pity that some of our own people who really should know better are themselves celebrating and participating in this process. The people of Norton, of course, if they get the bull of Norton, they'll no doubt be celebrating. But I don't know whether they really fully appreciate that that is a short-lived, because Norton will never be an oasis of success where the people of Norton live in houses with clean running water. All their basic institutions like schools and hospitals are fully staffed, fully equipped, and functional. And they can afford all the other basics of life and to live a comfortable life. I don't know whether they think they can achieve that while they still maintain the present situation of unemployment of 80% plus. Because at the present moment, the IMP is promising them toilets and boreholes, but he knows he can't promise them job opportunities, because as long as the country is a failed state, there's not going to be any significant investment in Zimbabwe. And if they think that the people are going to invest in Norton as if it's an oasis in the middle of this failed state desert of Zimbabwe, well, they are being naive. ZANU-PF is rigging these elections, and participating in them in any way is only giving the regime legitimacy and perpetuating the dictatorship and perpetuating the failed state. That is the fact. And any intelligent individual out there who keeps on participating in these elections must know that they are perpetuating the dictatorship, that they are perpetuating the failed state. That is a fact. Thank you very much, and good night.